Imagine the sunlight streaming through your window, the world outside buzzing with life. But as you sit up in bed, a strange sensation washes over you, a hollow ache in your chest, a quiet but persistent void that no amount of distraction can fill. You go about your day, smiling at coworkers, scrolling through social media, and ticking off tasks on your to-do list, but the emptiness lingers. It's not sadness, not quite despair, but something deeper, more elusive, a sense that something vital is missing, though you can't quite name it. This is the inner void. It's not a place you can point to on a map, not a wound you can bandage, but a chasm within your psyche that whispers of disconnection, of fragmentation. It's the feeling of being lost in your own life, a stranger to yourself, even as you wear the mask of someone who has it all together. And here's the paradox. In a world that offers endless ways to fill your time, your mind, and your heart, why does this emptiness persist? Why, in an age of unprecedented connection, do so many of us feel so profoundly alone? Carl Jung, the pioneering Swiss psychiatrist, called this the shadow, the parts of ourselves we've disowned, repressed, or ignored in our quest to fit into the world. But the shadow is only one layer of the void. Beneath it lies something even more profound, a crisis of meaning, a rupture in our relationship with ourselves. Jung believed that the modern human is caught in a spiritual dilemma, torn between the demands of the external world and the whispers of the soul. We've been taught to chase success, to accumulate achievements, to build identities based on what we do rather than who we are. But what happens when the ladder we've been climbing leans against the wrong wall? What happens when the life we've built feels like a house of cards, ready to collapse at the slightest tremor? The inner void is not just a personal problem, it's a cultural one. We live in a world that prizes productivity over presence, speed over depth, and certainty over curiosity. We're told to find ourselves, but how can we do that when the very systems we inhabit discourage introspection, silence, and stillness? The void, then, is not just an absence, it's a rebellion. It's the psyche's way of saying, this is not enough. You are more than this. But how do we listen to that voice? How do we begin to fill the void without resorting to the same distractions that created it? Consider this. What if the void is not something to be feared or avoided, but a gateway to something greater? What if, instead of running from the emptiness, we turn toward it, not as an enemy, but as a guide? Jung believed that the path to wholeness begins with confronting the parts of ourselves we'd rather ignore, the fears, the desires, the contradictions that make us human. But this is no easy task. It requires courage, honesty, and a willingness to sit with discomfort. It asks us to question everything we've been taught about who we are and what we're meant to be. So, here's the great question. What if the void is not a sign of brokenness, but an invitation? An invitation to dive deep into the uncharted waters of your own psyche, to confront the shadows, and to emerge not as the person you thought you were supposed to be, but as the person you truly are? What if the emptiness is not the end of the road, but the beginning of a journey within? This is not a journey for the faint of heart. It will ask you to let go of old stories, to face truths you've spent a lifetime avoiding, and to embrace the uncertainty of becoming. But it is also a journey of profound transformation, one that promises not just to fill the void, but to reveal the depths of your own potential. As we delve deeper into this exploration, we'll uncover the hidden forces that keep us trapped in the void, the psychological and philosophical roots of our disconnection, and the radical steps we can take to heal and rediscover ourselves. But first, we must confront the question that lies at the heart of this journey. What are you willing to risk to find yourself? The void is calling. Will you answer? To understand the inner void, we must first confront its origins, not just in our personal lives, but in the very fabric of human existence. This emptiness, this sense of disconnection, is not a modern invention. It is as old as consciousness itself, a shadow that has followed humanity through the ages. But in our contemporary world, it has taken on a new urgency, amplified by the rhythms of modern life and the structures of our society. Carl Jung believed that the void arises from a fundamental split within the human psyche, a division between the conscious self and the unconscious. The conscious self, or the ego, is the part of us that navigates the external world. It's the voice that plans, analyzes, and strives. But beneath the surface lies the unconscious, a vast and mysterious realm that holds our deepest fears, desires, and memories. Jung saw the unconscious not as a dark abyss to be feared, but as a wellspring of creativity, wisdom, and potential. The problem, however, is that modern life often forces us to neglect this inner world. We're so busy chasing external goals, career success, social validation, material wealth, that we lose touch with the deeper currents of our own psyche. This split is not accidental. It's a product of centuries of cultural conditioning, rooted in the Enlightenment's emphasis on rationality and the Industrial Revolution's focus on productivity. Thinkers like Friedrich Nietzsche warned of the consequences of this shift. In his proclamation that God is dead, Nietzsche wasn't just critiquing religion. He was pointing to the loss of meaning that comes when we prioritize reason and science over the spiritual and the symbolic. Without a connection to something greater than ourselves, whether we call it God, the soul, or the collective unconscious, we are left adrift in a sea of existential uncertainty. Arthur Schopenhauer, another philosopher who grappled with the human condition, saw the void as an inherent part of existence. He believed that life is characterized by an endless cycle of desire and dissatisfaction. We chase after goals, believing they will bring us fulfillment, only to find that the satisfaction is fleeting. Once one desire is fulfilled, another takes its place, leaving us in a perpetual state of longing. Schopenhauer's solution was to transcend desire through art, compassion, and asceticism, a radical rejection of the ego's demands. But in a world that glorifies consumption and achievement, his insights feel almost heretical. The void, then, is not just a personal failing. It's a symptom of a deeper cultural malaise. We live in a society that values doing over being, having over becoming. We're taught to measure our worth by external metrics, our job titles, our bank accounts, our social media followings. But these markers of success often leave us feeling hollow. As the French existentialist Jean-Paul Sartre observed, man is condemned to be free. This freedom, while liberating, is also terrifying. Without the structures of tradition or religion to guide us, we are forced to create our own meaning. But in a world that offers endless distractions, it's easy to avoid this responsibility, to fill the void with noise rather than face the silence. Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, saw the search for meaning as the central drive of human life. In his seminal work Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl argued that those who survived the horrors of the concentration camps were not necessarily the strongest or the healthiest, but those who found a sense of purpose. He believed that meaning could be discovered even in the most suffering, but only if we are willing to confront the void head-on. What man actually needs, Frankl wrote, is not a tensionless state, but rather the striving and struggling for a worthwhile goal, a freely chosen task. Yet, in our modern world, we often seek to escape the tension rather than embrace it. We numb ourselves with entertainment, substances, and busyness, afraid to confront the questions that lie at the heart of the void. Who am I? What do I truly want? What is my purpose? These questions are uncomfortable because they force us to confront our own limitations, our own mortality. But as Jung understood, it is only by facing these questions that we can begin to heal the split within ourselves. The void, then, is not just an absence. It's a call to action. It's the psyche's way of demanding that we stop running, stop distracting ourselves, and start listening. But listening requires courage. It requires us to step off the treadmill of modern life, to sit with our discomfort, and to explore the uncharted territories of our own inner world. As we move forward, we'll explore the unseen consequences of ignoring this call, the ways in which the void shapes our behavior, our relationships, and our sense of self. But for now, consider this. What if the void is not a problem to be solved, but a question to be lived? What if, by embracing the emptiness, we can begin to uncover the answers we've been searching for all along? The journey within is not an easy one, but it is a necessary one. And it begins with a single, radical act, the decision to stop running and start listening. What will you hear when the noise fades away? The inner void is not a passive presence. It is an active force, shaping our lives in ways we often fail to recognize. Like a silent undercurrent, it influences our decisions, our relationships, and our sense of self, often without our conscious awareness. To ignore the void is not to escape it. It is to allow it to govern us from the shadows. And the consequences of this neglect are profound, both on a personal and societal level. That on a personal level, the void manifests as a pervasive sense of dissatisfaction. You might achieve your goals, climb the ladder of success, and check off every box on society's checklist, yet still feel a gnawing emptiness. This is because the void cannot be filled by external achievements alone. It demands something deeper, a connection to your authentic self, to your purpose, to the mysteries of existence. When this connection is absent, life can feel like a series of meaningless tasks, a treadmill that keeps moving but never takes you anywhere. This dissatisfaction often leads to what psychologists call existential anxiety, a deep-seated fear that life lacks meaning or that we are not living up to our potential. This anxiety can manifest in various ways, as chronic stress, as a sense of aimlessness, or as a compulsive need to stay busy. We fill our schedules to the brim, not because we want to, but because we're afraid of what we might find in the silence. We scroll through social media, not because it brings us joy, but because it distracts us from the discomfort of being alone with our thoughts. But the consequences of the void extend far beyond individual suffering. On a societal level, the collective neglect of the inner world has led to what some have called a crisis of meaning. Rates of depression, anxiety, and suicide are on the rise, particularly in affluent societies where material needs are largely met. This suggests that the problem is not a lack of resources, but a lack of purpose. We have more than ever before, yet we feel emptier than ever before. This crisis is exacerbated by the cultural narratives that dominate our world. We are told that happiness can be bought, that success is measured by external achievements, and that the self is something to be curated and displayed. Social media, in particular, has become a breeding ground for comparison and inadequacy. We present polished versions of ourselves to the world, hiding our struggles and imperfections, while consuming the highlight reels of others. This creates a vicious cycle of disconnection as we compare our inner reality to others' outer facades, deepening the sense of alienation and inadequacy. Cognitive biases further compound the problem. The hedonic treadmill phenomenon, for example, explains why we quickly adapt to new achievements or possessions, returning to a baseline level of happiness. This means that no matter how much we acquire or achieve, the void remains. Similarly, the negativity bias causes us to focus on what's wrong rather than what's right, amplifying feelings of dissatisfaction and inadequacy. Neurologically, the void can be understood as a disconnect between the brain's default mode network, DMN, and its task-positive network, TPN. The DMN is active when we're at rest, reflecting on ourselves and our lives, while the TPN is active when we're focused on external tasks. In a healthy brain, these networks work in harmony, allowing us to balance introspection with action. But in a world that prioritizes constant busyness, the TPN often dominates, leaving little room for the DMN to function. This imbalance can lead to rumination, anxiety, and a sense of disconnection from ourselves. The void also shapes our relationships. When we're disconnected from ourselves, it's difficult to form genuine connections with others. We might seek validation through relationships, using others to fill the emptiness within us. But this creates a dynamic of dependency and insecurity as we look to others to provide what we cannot provide for ourselves. Alternatively, we might withdraw from relationships altogether, fearing vulnerability and rejection. In either case, the result is the same: a deepening sense of isolation. Perhaps the most insidious consequence of the void is its impact on our sense of identity. In a world that values external achievements over inner growth, it's easy to confuse who we are with what we do. We define ourselves by our jobs, our relationships, our possessions, and our social status. But these identities are fragile, dependent on external validation, and subject to change. When we lose a job, end a relationship, or fail to meet societal expectations, we are left questioning not just our worth, but our very sense of self. The void, then, is not just a personal problem, it's a societal one. It's a symptom of a world that has lost touch with the inner dimensions of life, prioritizing productivity over presence, consumption over creation, and achievement over authenticity. But the void is also an opportunity, a call to reclaim what we've lost, to reconnect with ourselves, and to rediscover the deeper currents of meaning and purpose as we move forward. We'll explore how to break free from the patterns that keep us trapped in the void. But for now, consider this. What if the void is not a curse, but a catalyst? What if, by confronting the emptiness, we can begin to rebuild our lives on a foundation of authenticity and purpose? The journey within is not an easy one, but it is a necessary one. And it begins with a single, radical act, the decision to stop running and start listening. What will you hear when the noise fades away? The void is not a life sentence. It is not an immutable truth of existence, but a call to rebellion, a call to break free from the patterns, beliefs, and systems that keep us trapped in disconnection and dissatisfaction. This rebellion is not a violent overthrow, but a quiet revolution, a turning inward to reclaim what has been lost. It begins with a radical shift in perspective, the realization that the void is not something to be feared or avoided, but a gateway to transformation. Carl Jung understood this better than anyone. He believed that the path to wholeness, what he called individuation, requires us to confront the parts of ourselves we've disowned or repressed. This is not an easy process. It demands courage, honesty, and a willingness to sit with discomfort. But it is also a profoundly liberating one, as it allows us to integrate the fragmented parts of ourselves and reclaim our authenticity. The first step in this rebellion is to stop running. In a world that glorifies busyness and distraction, this is no small feat. It requires us to carve out moments of silence and stillness, to resist the urge to fill every empty space with noise. This might mean setting aside time each day for meditation, journaling, or simply sitting in nature. The goal is not to achieve a particular state of mind, but to create a space where the inner voice can be heard. Once we've created this space, the next step is to listen. This means tuning into our emotions, our desires, and our fears, even when they're uncomfortable. It means asking ourselves difficult questions. What am I truly feeling? What do I really want? What am I afraid of? These questions are not meant to be answered immediately, but to be lived with, explored, and reflected upon. Jung believed that dreams are a powerful tool for this exploration. He saw them as messages from the unconscious, offering insights into our deepest fears, desires, and potentials. Keeping a dream journal can be a valuable practice, as it allows us to track recurring themes and symbols, and to begin a dialogue with the unconscious. But the rebellion is not just an inward journey, it is also an outward one. It requires us to challenge the cultural narratives that have shaped our sense of self. This might mean questioning the values we've been taught to prioritize: success, status, material wealth, and exploring what truly matters to us. It might mean redefining success on our own terms, not as something to be achieved, but as something to be lived. One of the most powerful ways to break free from the void is to reconnect with our creativity. Creativity is not just about making art. It's about tapping into the life force within us, the part of us that is alive, curious, and generative. This might mean picking up a paintbrush, writing a poem, or simply allowing ourselves to play. The goal is not to produce something of value, but to reconnect with the joy of creation. Another key aspect of the rebellion is to cultivate a sense of purpose. Viktor Frankl believed that meaning can be found in even the most difficult circumstances, but only if we are willing to take responsibility for our lives. This means identifying what matters to us, our values, our passions, our gifts, and aligning our actions with these priorities. It means living with intention, rather than drifting through life on autopilot. Relationships also play a crucial role in breaking free from the void. But these must be relationships of depth and authenticity, rather than dependency or validation. This means being willing to show up as our true selves, to be vulnerable, and to connect with others on a soul level. It means seeking out communities that support our growth and reflect our values, rather than conforming to societal expectations. Finally, the rebellion requires us to embrace the unknown. The void is, by its very nature, a space of uncertainty. It asks us to let go of old stories, to step into the unknown, and to trust in the process of becoming. This is not easy. It requires us to confront our fears, to sit with discomfort, and to surrender control. But it is also where the magic happens, where we discover new depths of resilience, creativity, and authenticity. As we move forward, we'll explore the ultimate truth that lies at the heart of this journey, the realization that redefines how we see ourselves and the world. But for now, consider this. What if the void is not a curse, but a gift? What if, by embracing the emptiness, we can begin to uncover the fullness of who we are. The journey within is not an easy one, but it is a necessary one. And it begins with a single, radical act, the decision to stop running and start listening. What will you hear when the noise fades away? The journey within, the rebellion against the void, leads us to a profound and transformative realization. The void is not separate from us. It is not an external force to be conquered or filled. It is a mirror, reflecting back to us the parts of ourselves we have forgotten, ignored, or rejected. The void is not emptiness, it is potential. It is the space where the seeds of our true self lie dormant, waiting to be awakened. This realization is both liberating and unsettling. It means that the answers we've been seeking, the sense of purpose, the connection, the wholeness, are not out there. They are within us, waiting to be discovered. But this discovery requires us to let go of everything we thought we knew about ourselves. It asks us to release the identities we've constructed, the stories we've told ourselves, and the masks we've worn to navigate the world. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the integration of the conscious and unconscious parts of the psyche. It is not about becoming perfect or achieving some idealized version of ourselves. It is about becoming whole, embracing both the light and the shadow, the strengths and the vulnerabilities, the known and the unknown. It is about reclaiming our authenticity and stepping into the fullness of who we are. The ultimate truth is this: the void is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. It is the space where creation begins, where transformation unfolds, where the self is reborn. It is the womb of the soul, the birthplace of meaning. And it is only by entering this space, by sitting with the discomfort and the uncertainty, that we can begin to uncover the treasures hidden within. This truth challenges everything we've been taught about success, happiness, and fulfillment. It tells us that the path to wholeness is not a straight line, but a spiral, a journey of descent and return, of death and rebirth. It asks us to embrace the paradoxes of existence, that we must lose ourselves to find ourselves, that we must confront the darkness to discover the light, that we must surrender control to find true freedom. The void, then, is not an enemy to be defeated, but an ally to be embraced. It is the call to adventure, the threshold to transformation, the gateway to the soul. And it is only by answering this call, by stepping into the unknown, that we can begin to live a life of depth, meaning, and authenticity. As we stand at the edge of this realization, we are faced with a choice: to turn back, to cling to the familiar, to remain trapped in the patterns of disconnection and dissatisfaction, or to step forward, to embrace the uncertainty, to embark on the journey within. The choice is ours. The void is calling. Will we answer? The journey within is not an easy one, but it is a necessary one. And it begins with a single, radical act, the decision to stop running and start listening. What will you hear when the noise fades away? What will you discover when you step into the void? The answers lie within. The journey begins now.